Welcome to part 2 of this introduction to phonology and pronunciation. In this film I'll cover some basic terms, some terminology related to this area, and also some pretty common challenges that many Norwegian learners of English struggle with. First, some basic terms. You see all these three terms, phonology, phonetics, phonemes, they start with the same part, and this part comes from Greek, phone, and it means sound. The same part is used in words like telephone and phonograph too. Now, phonology refers to the system of the language, the phonological system. Phonology tells us that there are 44 phonemes or speech sounds in English. Phonetics is interested in how these speech sounds are articulated, because they are articulated in different ways, as you'll see. We already mentioned the phonemic symbols. There's a symbol for the sound ah, f, etc. And note how phonemic symbols are different from letters. There are 26 letters in English, but 44 phonemes. And this can be illustrated if you look at the letter O. It's used in words like do, more, money, and cold. But you see in these four words that the letter O can result in 4 different speech sounds, 4 different phonemes. An allophone is a variety of a phoneme. Let's use an example from Norwegian first. You know that some people say r, some people say r. I can't really do it, but the Bergen skarar. Now, the symbol or the phoneme for these two sounds would be the same. It's an R, r, whatever. They function in the same way in a word like rose, rose. The meaning would be the same, and that's what defines a phoneme. It brings about, or it defines the meaning of a word. Now, whether you use one allophone or another, rose or rose, doesn't matter for the meaning. These are just variations in pronunciation that do not influence the meaning. Same thing in English, of course. Some people would say no, some people would say no. The phoneme would be the same. The meaning of those words would be the same. But some people prefer to say no, some people like to say no. These are allophones. Finally, I'd like to mention what stress marks are. They're those little, well, you see them. They indicate where stress is placed in a word or in a sentence, so that you can find out, is it present or is it present? The stress mark is placed before the syllable that receives stress. And when you look words up in the dictionary, these stress marks can be very useful. In a long word like meteorology, how do you deal with that? Well, the stress mark tells you, meteorology. That's where the stress mark is, or that's where the stress should be. Now, let's look at the 44 phonemes of English. This chart corresponds to the one on page 206 in your textbook. However, I'm extremely embarrassed and sorry to say that there's a misprint on that page. 5 of these consonant phonemes are simply not in the book. I don't know what happened to them. They're not there, but they're here. So we'll go through them. Before we start, perhaps I should say a few words about the terms at the top there. Vowels, you know what they are. Consonants, you know what they are. But forties and linis. Forties is Latin. It means strong. Linis means weak. When you refer to speech sounds, the difference is often that forties sounds are not only strong, they're unvoiced. There's no voice involved. With leanies, consonants, you use voice. You can see this in words like p, pet, b, bet. P, no voice, b, voice. T, no voice, d, voice. Ch, no voice, j, voice. If you have trouble deciding whether a sound is voiced or not, you can simply check your Adam's apple. Z, b, b, v, th, z. There's vibration with voiced sounds, and that's because you use your voice, you use your vocal cords. Now, let's go through all of these. Vowel phonemes first. English differentiates between a long E and a short E. So you have E as in eat, you have I as in pit. E is always short in English, and you have E as in pet, A as in cat, A as in cup. Note that one. It's often problematic for Norwegian learners. Cup. The long A isn't though. Car. O as in stop. There's a little asterisk there, and the book will tell you, and I will tell you now, that this short O doesn't exist in American English. Americans don't say stop, they say stop. They use the long A instead of the short O. However, everyone, I think, uses the long O as in more, the short U as in put, the long U as in fall, the long as in bird, and we'll come back to that. Smile as you say ah. It's different from the Norwegian with lip rounding. The last vowel in the left-hand column is the so-called schwa, the upside-down e. Again, it's the unstressed again. It's used a lot in English. Over to diphthongs. A as in 8, I as in high, oi as in boy, o or o as in stone, ow as in out, ear, here, air, there, or cure. And again, American English and many other accents will not have the or. They're primarily British or British-like, and there's always an R in the spelling. In American English, you'd have the long E and the R, here, instead. Over to consonants. Fairly straightforward, and this is where they're really easy, and they correspond to the letters in Norwegian that we're used to. P as in pet, T as in two. However, here's another one, new one. Ch as in chair, K as in car, F as in far, Th as in three. Stick your tongue out. Three. S as in sit, Sh, show, H, hat. And then the leanis, the voiced varieties of the first ones at least. B, bet, d, do, j, John. Note how ch is unvoiced, j is voiced. G as in go, v as in view, th as in this. And again, th as in three is unvoiced, th as in this is voiced, or leanis. Z as in zoo. Notice how English has two phonemes where Norwegian has one. There's a difference between S and Z. And as I said earlier, different phonemes bring about a difference in meaning. We'll come back to this. Zh as in pleasure. Sh is unvoiced, zh is voiced. Pleasure. M as in mat, n as in no, ng as in sing, l as in let, ring, y, yes, w, why. These then are the sounds of English, and these are the symbols for them. Over to speech organs. You could perhaps say that the lungs are the most important thing here, because without air from the lungs, no speech, no sound. However, as the air comes out, or as we let air come out from our lungs, we modify the airstream in different ways, and that's where the speech organs come in. And we use all of these. We use the tongue, we use the lips, we use the teeth Teeth. Without teeth, it's very hard to say teeth. We use the teeth ridge, the alveolar ridge, it's called also. It's the little hard ridge. If you bring your tongue behind your teeth, you can feel it. And that's where our tongue is when we say, for example, t, d in English. N, n. Then, if you bring your tongue even further back, you'll feel your hard palate. And if you want to say y, y, for example, you have to bring your tongue up towards your hard palate. Further back, bring your tongue even further back, and you'll feel the palate goes soft. The soft palate, or the velum, as it's also sometimes called, that's where you bring your tongue up to say things like k, g. Can you feel the back of your tongue move up towards your soft palate when you say k, g? If you look in a mirror, you'll see your uvula, drøvel in Norwegian. Now, there are no uvular sounds in English, but there are uvular sounds in other languages. Arabic, for example, uses the uvula a lot. People from Bergen use it to say that r, the skarre r. In English, the uvula is not used as a speech organ or to produce speech sounds. Very important are also the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. The openings, the open spaces in our head, so to speak. We need those to make sound, just like a guitar or a violin needs a case around the strings to resonate, to make sound. We use our oral and our nasal cavity. We don't know that we do it, but we do. You'll be amazed throughout this course of all the things that we just do without even knowing how clever we are. The oral and the nasal cavity are used as resonance cases for our speech. If we move further down, we come to the larynx. This is where the vocal folds or the vocal cords are. They are like strings. They move together in order to make voice when we activate them. We don't have to activate them, but we often do. Most often do, because we use a lot of vowels and a lot of voiced consonants to speak. And of course, when we sing, we activate them all the time. And they make a lot of vibration in the larynx, or the Adam's apple, as it's also sometimes called. The glottis is the opening between the vocal folds. It's used a lot, especially in British English, to produce the so-called glottal stop. Instead of the T, for example, in glottal, people will say glottal, glottal. It's not a speech sound in English, it's an allophone. People use the glottal stop instead of the speech sound T or D. Over to some challenges. I'll mention just a few speech sounds that are problematic for many Norwegian learners of English. I'll say a few words about stress and rhythm and a few words about intonation, but we'll come back to all of these as the course progresses. First of all, V and W. There are two sounds here in English, and many Norwegians do not seem to be aware of this. Not only that, English V has more friction than the Norwegian V, as in vann, hvilken, hvem, etc. You should really bite your lower lip in order to produce the V in English. So, Viking, vet, village. Veterans of the war are very welcome to visit the village of Wellington. I'm sure you've heard people who say Viking or village or very welcome. Note that there are two sounds and we have to differentiate between them. Some words are differentiated simply by way of these two sounds. There's a difference, for example, between a vet and being wet. Here's another troublesome sound. It's th, not t. The trick is to put the tip of your tongue between your front teeth and blow. This sound is unvoiced, strong, fortis. As in think, thing, three. You can practice in tongue twisters like this one. Healthy Theo tickles, three, thin, thirsty thieves with filthy teeth. It is important to say thanks and not tanks. However, if you have problems with this, you're in good company. Many speakers of English, even native speakers of English, tend to use t instead of th. However, as teachers of English, we should be able to deal with th. It's a central speech sound in English, and we should be able both to say it, use it, and teach it to our learners. Here's another sound, the, not d. This sound is just like th, but it's voiced. Linis. This, these, they, that. These brothers only bathe in good weather, but their mother and father and other brother don't bother about bad weather. Weather. Hopefully you can feel the vibration. You use your vocal cords there, and there's vibration both in your Adam's apple, and perhaps you can also feel it in the tongue that you stick out between your teeth. Many people aren't even aware that there are two S sounds in English. It's an important thing to know because many words are distinguished, or the meaning between two words can be distinguished only by the use of z or s. Z is voiced, but it's first and foremost weak. Here, the underlined S's in the spelling are pronounced as the weak voiced Z. He loves Mary's eyes. It's not he loves Mary's. Don't overdo it. The trick is often to lengthen the vowel sound in front of the voiced S and then make the voiced S very weak. He loves Mary's eyes. Please pass the peas. You hear the difference between the unvoiced S in pass and the voiced S in please and peas. The voiced S is used in common words like busy, music, lazy, has, does, is, goes, etc. Present tense forms of common verbs. We'll come back to how or when the voiced S is used in these on these occasions. Also, the voiced S is used in a word like jazz and in those were the days. It's important, if you want to compliment on somebody's beautiful eyes, that you actually talk about their eyes and not about their ice. Ice, written with a C, is pronounced with unvoiced S. Look at those beautiful eyes. Over to some vowels. And ah. Look at the guy to the right there. He smiles, and that's the trick. Ah and ah are pronounced without lip rounding in English. So try to smile as you say cut, butt, butter, honey, money, sun, Sunday, monkey, glove, dub, much, luck, cup. I'm sure you've heard Norwegians, or perhaps others even, say cut, butt, butter, and perhaps å, honey, money. There should be no lip rounding. And all of these words have the same sound. Ah, cut, butt. Same thing can be said about the long no lip rounding, smile. Bird, sa, girl, her, pearl, word, worse, nurse, world, early. Now, I pronounce the R in world and early. Some people wouldn't. World, I can't even do it. Early, nurse. With the Vowel sound though, remember to smile and to not make the lip rounding that you're used to using in Norwegian. Norwegians are very good with lip rounding, and we have to be because we have vowel sounds like a, o. Naturally, we have to move our lips a lot. Notice when you watch somebody speak English on TV, how many of them, they hardly move their lips at all. And that's because they don't have to use as active lip rounding as we do in Norwegian. Stress and rhythm. I also already mentioned briefly how stress has to do with emphasis. There's a difference between present and present. Which syllable do you stress? There's word stress, as in present, present, meteorology. But there's also sentence stress, and that has to do with the fact that we stress the important words and we don't stress the unimportant little function words in English. Here, for example, fish and chips. We hardly say and. Fish and chips. No, fish and chips. Rhythm and blues. Rock and roll. This is a very typical trait of English. The little unimportant words that we swallow are often referred to as weak forms. They're function words and they are not very important for the meaning. We'll come back to this, of course. Look at the rhythm in this sentence. Rhythm then has to do with how stress works in connected speech. The present was too expensive for them to buy. The present was too expensive for them to buy. What did you think when you heard the news? What did you think when you heard the news? This very strong, marked rhythm of English is very typical, and it sounds good, and it makes it fun too. I hope you think so, anyway. Here is Hamlet. To be or not to be, that's the question. Notice how to or to the are weak forms. They're hardly ever even pronounced. We go for the main lexical words, and the function words are almost swallowed. To be or not to be, that's the question. Intonation. Intonation has to do with the sentence melodies, the melodies of the language. You can say, that's wonderful, with a melody that goes down. Or you can say, that's wonderful, with a sentence melody that goes up. Notice how the different melodies signal different meanings. If you really mean that something is wonderful, you should use a melody that goes down. That's wonderful. If somebody shows you something that you think is wonderful, then you say, that's wonderful. People may wonder what you mean. A melody that goes up in English usually signals a yes-no question. Now, that's a bit problematic for those of us who come from southeast Norway. We go up all the time when we speak Norwegian. That's wonderful. I'm teaching English. That's my profession. I go to school every day. We tend to go up all the time. In English, this may sound a bit funny, charming maybe, but most of all, we may sound as if we ask questions all the time. And it might be a good idea to be aware maybe that's not what we want to do. Another challenge that many of us have, or all of us, is this, and it's often referred to as the Norwegian roller coaster transfer. We tend to go up and down all the time when we speak English. This is what, for example, identifies a speaker like Petter Solberg or Jens Stoltenberg or anyone. The thing is, in Norwegian, intonation is related to words. We differentiate between words by way of intonation. You may understand what I'm talking about. The famous bønner, bønner. But that's only one example. We have landet, lande, tanken, tanken, hoppe, hoppe. There are many, many, many words like those, and we make them differ in meaning simply by way of the melody that we use. Since we're used to this, we tend to do the same thing in English, and that's why we're talking about the roller coaster. We go up and we go down. Now, it's not only Norwegians who do this. You may have watched the Swedish cook in the Muppet Show. He hardly ever says a word that can be understood, but he's very easily recognizable as a Swede because the way he says do 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 do. Nothing wrong with it, maybe, but it's something that we can be aware of. A final note on work with pronunciation in the classroom. It's very important to remember that pronunciation is something that we can work with, but there's no such thing as wrong intonation or wrong pronunciation as long as we understand what someone is saying, right? Again, remember, communication is the main thing. Communication is the goal for what we're working with in the English language classroom. So please don't ever stop someone and say, that didn't sound right, or your intonation sounds really funny, or, that's why we shouldn't make fun of Petter Solberg. He communicates well. When that is said, we can work with pronunciation, and that's where the practical aesthetic expressions come in. She sells seashells by the seashore. We can work with little texts, little rhymes, songs. We can work with this, and working together as a chorus is always a very good idea. To practice saying these difficult sounds, of course. It's natural and necessary to do so. Still, do remember, communication is the main thing, and I hope you too remember that as we keep working on this part of your English studies.